We'll move now to question number 10 in the name of Deputy O'Reilly.
The question is a fairly straightforward one. I'm just looking for some information in relation to the tenant in situ. Genuinely seems like I don't know if it's the third or the fourth secret of Fatima or whatever it is, trying to get information out of the County Council can be incredibly difficult, and it shouldn't be, because this is a very important intervention. It's a homeless prevention measure, and for the avoidance of any doubt, Minister, any person who applies for the tenant in situ scheme who doesn't get it is given some very helpful advice by the County Council, but you and I both know they're just heading straight into emergency accommodation.
Thanks, Minister.
The local authority home loan is a government-backed mortgage for credit-worthy applicants who cannot get sufficient funding from. Wrong one. Question 10. Apologies. The tenant in situ acquisitions programme has been a key measure in the prevention of homelessness since its introduction in 2023. Therefore, Government has agreed funding to continue the programme for 2025, and my department has notified local authorities on the extension of the programme, and a circular setting out the arrangements will issue shortly. In 2023, Fingal County Council purchased a total of 2021 homes, exceeding the allocation of 125. In the first 9 months of 2024, Fingal completed 116 second-hand acquisitions, exceeding their allocation of 100. My department does not hold data on the number of acquisition applications that have been withdrawn or rejected, nor does it hold data on the timelines for such acquisitions. This information and the details for requesting a review on decisions made may be available from individual local authorities. My department publishes comprehensive programme-level statistics on a quarterly basis on social housing delivery activity by local authorities and approved housing bodies in each local authority. Comprehensive data on social and affordable housing is published on my department's website up to Q3 2024, including completed acquisitions. Data for all of these schemes up to Q4 2024 is being collected and collated at the moment. Thank you, Gerlach.
Specifics in relation to 2025 as well. So I have constituents who, and I'm not going to give you too many details because it's absolutely mortifying for people to have their entire private life traipsed across the Dáil, but I have a woman who is, she's a survivor of domestic abuse, and so is one of her daughters that are living with us herself, and her daughters and her grandchildren. They have now been given a notice to quit, and the advice that they get from the council is, if you're in receipt of a valid, contact the homeless services, right? If you have a housing application with another local authority, direct it to the parent authority, and if you don't have, you can join the housing list. And people are advised to go and get themselves private rented accommodation. There's no private rented accommodation in my constituency, Minister. Absolutely none, zero. That advice is quite frankly insulting. But just so you know, this woman tells me it's hopeless. She said, I cannot sleep with the stress. She works nights and she spends her days awake, frantic, worrying about where she, her daughters and her grandchildren are going to live. So if the council have that information now from you, that's welcome. But actually what they need to do is they need an instruction from your department, Minister, to actually get going on purchasing these. And as I've said, for the avoidance of any doubt, it's a homeless prevention measure. The people who are not successful under this scheme or who have to leave because the scheme takes too long are going into emergency accommodation. There is no rental accommodation.
Thank you very much. And again, thank the Deputy for this important question, and I'm very much aware of what is a housing crisis right across this country, and that very much does, I suppose, cause very serious pain and suffering for individual families as a result of that, and that's why I'm determined to get our housing deliveries increase at a significant level. The tenant in situ scheme is a programme to ensure that people don't become homeless. That's why €325 million has been made available for this year, and local authorities will be issued a circular in the very, very near future, notify them of their allocation of funding to purchase houses under the tenant in situ scheme.
Will be noted, and a member of the team will be in contact once they have further details and clarity from your department. So it's incredibly important that you get that information out ASAP. It's long overdue, but as is often the case with this government, sure, it might be better late than never. But you know, we're talking about human beings. The stress of this is unbelievable, Minister. I really, I'm not sure if it gets through to you what it must be like to go to sleep every night and just not know. Like, people don't want to overhold, but they are being advised that that might be the only option, because there isn't anywhere else for them to go. There's nowhere for them to rent. I think we can all agree that. And emergency accommodation is not where people want to go, particularly if you have kids that have additional or special needs, or if you yourself have special needs. So, I mean, I'm dealing with a man in his 60s who's overholden. The stress of that is absolutely incredible. And they're waiting for information from your department in relation to a homeless prevention measure in the middle of a housing crisis that you have caused. Minister, I really don't get any sense of urgency coming from you this morning in relation to this, and I will convey that back to my constituents, but it will give me absolutely no pleasure to do it.
You have a supplementary from your colleague?
Here, look, the Tenant in Situ has been one of those successes in relation to preventing homelessness. We need that circular to issue as soon as possible, or that the the actual criteria, and obviously that the funding is actually provided to local authorities. We've had a huge amount of cases, and Louth County Council took on with a huge amount of purchases that saved an awful lot of people from dreadful sets of circumstances. But there's a huge amount that have been stalled within the last period. And I accept there needs to be checks and balances in relation to purchasing houses that are up to standard. But I think because there has been an insufficient amount of times also, and I've spoken to the Minister before, that there needs to be flexibility in relation to the money from a, let's say, a maintenance point of view. And at times the local authority is not looking at, let's say, old local authority housing stock, and it's literally looking at what are almost brand new houses. And while I accept it needs to be up to a certain spec, I think there needs to be flexibility. That needs to be built into the system. I can think of one young woman and a house that should be bought, even from an estate management point of view, in a local authority housing estate. I think would be a win all round, for herself, but also for that particular estate and all the rest of it. And I do think that flexibility needs to be in, but we need this to happen as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, I can assure the deputies this is an absolute priority for myself. It's not ideal that it wasn't resolved before the general election. The funding is now put in place. I'll be acting with absolute speed to get this circular out. The very same people who were in that very distressing situation come to myself, Deputy. It might surprise you, but they actually do come to Fianna Fáil TDs as well, and they come to my office and they come to my clinics as well, Deputy. You don't have a monopoly on sympathy in these situations, and we are doing everything we can to address the housing crisis. Thank you, Gerlach.
Minister, I'd like to also raise the Tenant in Situ scheme. It has been a hugely successful scheme for many constituents in Dublin South Central, and nationally it has prevented 20,000 people from losing their homes. Colleagues from across the House would all have people into our clinics waiting for this scheme to properly be recommenced. So with the additional funding, which is very welcome being announced, how many extra homes will be secured through the scheme, specifically in Dublin City Council, given the huge demand in the city?
Thank you again, Senator Arda. Tenant in situ acquisitions have been an important measure in the prevention of homelessness since their introduction in 2023. Government has therefore agreed to continue such acquisitions in 2025 and has increased the funding available for second-hand social housing acquisitions from the 60 million allocated under Housing for All to 325 million through the allocation of an additional 265 million. My department has been engaging with local authorities on the operational details for second-hand acquisitions programme, and a circular setting out the arrangements will issue shortly, and that may be able to answer your specific question in relation to Dublin City Council. Under revised arrangements for second-hand acquisitions in 2025, local authorities will receive a capital funding allocation for the acquisition of homes for the following priority categories: tenant in situ, elderly and disabled persons, exits from homelessness, and buy and renew acquisitions which tackle vacancy. The provision of a capital funding allocation will help promote best practice in obtaining value for money and provide local authorities with the flexibility response they need and priorities locally within their categories of need being prioritised. Tenants in situ acquisitions continue to be supported and prioritised where other solutions cannot be found for the affected tenants. It is a matter for local authorities to assess the circumstances of each case and decide the appropriate action. The arrangements for 2025 will ensure a more targeted and focused acquisitions programme.
Well, the extra funding is hugely welcome. The demand for the scheme continues to grow. We all have people literally, looking to get into our constituency offices, trying to find out when this scheme is recommencing. So can you confirm if the new allocation will fully meet the need, or will there be a further increase required? And also, are there measures in place to speed up the process for the purchases, as some tenants have been left waiting months, and the bureaucracy about trying to get approved for these schemes has been in the past very difficult, and obviously different local authorities have different methods of conveying the property. Some don't use electronic funds transfer, some are only using cheques. So is there a streamlined process for local authorities around the country to purchase the properties?
In fairness to you, one of the many government backbenchers who have called for the continuation of the tenant in situ scheme and the clarification, and we're glad today to be able to confirm that tenant in situ will continue into 2025, which I think is important clarity for those people out there. You absolutely agree with you. The scheme has been a success. Well over 2,000 households have avoided homelessness because of a tenant in situ scheme, and that's why, as Deputy Brown has said earlier, there is a commitment to continue the scheme. In terms of whether or not local authorities will be resourced enough in terms of to deliver what's necessary, look, absolutely, I think, as with all Housing for All solutions, adaptability and agility is really important. But as well as that, look, there has to be, and local authorities, and some, as I said, have been better than others in terms of delivery of social homes and delivery of affordable homes. That has to be the key focus. The best way that we can end homelessness, we can provide homes for all is by housing delivery. And that, along with availing for the supports of tenant in situ, the delivery of social homes and affordable homes has to be a key priority of local authorities.
Has the government considered streamlining the application process, and do all local authorities now have the necessary resources to ensure a quick turnaround time once the circular is issued? Finally, if demand exceeds the current budget, will further funding be made available by your department?
Up in relation to what I said before, look, we all get that the tenant in situ absolutely work to save people from homelessness. We are very worried about the tighter criteria, but I'm talking specifically if we can look at some flexibility in the sense of, at this stage, local authorities, and for the last while, have been looking almost at only brand new purchases or close to, because they were afraid of getting caught, for the want of a better term, on the hook from the maintenance point of view. Now, there's a problem around maintenance in general, and I do understand at times, you know what I mean, and we've all dealt with those who work in maintenance, and they're generally robbing Peter to pay Paul at times. But we do need to look at this particular solution, and like I said, estate management issues can really be addressed at times, even in relation to this, where it makes sense to buy back the house with a really good tenant in a local authority housing estate, and we don't need it to not, you know what I mean. We need situations like that to end in success for all, and to remove someone from the threat of homelessness.
Deputies and Deputy Murku, in relation to flexibility, and I think Minister Brown has already mentioned that in any circulars or correspondence to local authorities, there will be a degree of flexibility, and it certainly will be up to local authorities to implement the scheme. I don't think there's anything wrong at all with having some form of prioritisation. Most schemes do have forms of prioritisation. I think it's good practice, and I certainly I don't think it's something that we should be rolling back on in terms of this particular scheme. Deputy Ardara, in terms of streamlining the process, again, local authorities will be urged to turn around any tenant in situ purchases where it's deemed to be the solution in terms of avoiding homelessness as quickly as possible, and the proper resources will be given in that regard. But just to say again, so there's no ambiguity, the tenant in situ scheme is continuing, it will continue, and that is down to calls from opposition, but also many of our backbenchers who have for the past few weeks been urging government to continue the scheme, and it will happen.
13.
The question relates to the tenants in situ scheme, which again we raised last night, and Minister, I would ask you to reconsider the framing and limitations that you're putting on it. While you're in a welcome manner committing to continuing the tenant in situ scheme, I would argue that it's not actually a continuation of the tenants in situ scheme that has been in place, that the new limitations are actually changing the nature of the scheme.
Minister.
Thank you very much,
Tenant in situ acquisitions were introduced by government in 2023 in response to a reported uplift in sales by landlords under the HAP-RAS schemes. Such acquisitions have been an important measure in preventing homelessness, and the government has therefore agreed to continue the programme in 2025, and my department has notified local authorities on the extension of the programme, and a circular setting out the arrangements will issue shortly. The introduction of additional eligibility criteria for acquisitions in 2025 is to ensure that priority categories such as tenant in situ, elderly and disabled persons, and exits from homelessness can benefit in an equitable manner from the second-hand acquisitions programme. Under revised arrangements for 2025, local authorities will receive a capital funding allocation for the acquisition of homes for priority categories and tenant in situ, elderly and disabled persons, exits from homelessness, and buy or renew acquisitions which tackle vacancy. The provision of a capital funding allocation will help promote best practice in obtaining value for money and provide local authorities with flexibility to respond to needs and priorities locally within the categories of need being prioritised. The tenant in situ acquisitions continue to be supported and prioritised where other solutions cannot be found for the affected tenants, and the arrangements for 2025 will ensure a more targeted and focused acquisitions programme. Thank you, Gairloch.
Minister, again, while I appreciate that you're committing to continue the scheme, I would again ask you to provide the evidence to back up why are you targeting the scheme? Why is it not being provided on a general basis and local authorities given the flexibility and funding to respond to whatever the household is facing eviction or homelessness? Why does it have to be only families? Why are you saying that? No, I know, but by prioritisation means local authorities will have to decide we have a certain budget, some people will be able to keep in their homes, will be able to purchase the property, but others aren't, because we're in this system now, not of a general ability to apply the scheme, but a prioritisation. That means restricting some local authorities in their ability to do it.
Deputy McGuinness.
Minister, we had a discussion about this last night, and I mentioned that there are 17 households, 17 applications on ice in Waterford at the moment, and that's 17 families dealing with anxiety. It's also 17 landlords who are considering pulling out and going to the open market. And what I suppose this signal that is being sent from your department is to dissuade applicants. Local authorities are not encouraging people to make applications, the opposite in fact, and a clear message is being sent out to landlords: go to the open market, don't engage with local authority in this, and that is leading to an increase in the risk of homelessness. I just think it is something that needs to be addressed and addressed again.
Deputy Sheehan.
Here, look, Minister, we still haven't had a proper rationale as to why you have decided to curtail this scheme, and maybe you might outline to the House, now that you have excluded single people from the scheme, and we know that single people are not moving, on the housing list at the speed we would like due to the shortage of available units. What new measures are government bringing forward in relation to single people to stop them entering homelessness, to stop them entering emergency accommodation, because this is a huge issue?
Deputy Herb, would you like to conclude?
Yeah. I just think, Minister, that it's not true that you're continuing the tenants in situ scheme as was. There is a change to it. I think, particularly in relation to the issue of removal of the funding for refurbishment, will you reconsider and in the circular actually allow and allocate local authorities the funding for refurbishment within this scheme? Thank you.
Conclude.
Thank you very much, Gairloch. In fairness, I think I was supposed to respond before Deputy Hearn, so if he wants to respond after me again, I have no difficulty with that. Look, just in relation to the tenant in situ scheme, we do believe there needs to be criteria put onto it. It was introduced as a temporary measure. It is there as a last resort to prevent people going into homelessness. So it is. I did respond to all of this last night. It is, I suppose, somewhat frustrating. Nobody from the Labour Party or the Social Democrats were there last night for my response. Perhaps the two deputies are now learning that due to the pressures in the Dáil and the Oireachtas, that there's a lot of times you can't be in here for every single moment. But anyway, we'll leave that as it may be. But I did answer the question. Single people are not excluded. and it is completely misinformation to be putting that out there. And I would be concerned that single people will not apply for the scheme because of the misinformation being put out there by both deputies. There is flexibility in it. Like so many other schemes, there is a prioritisation being put into this. That happens in local authorities for social housing schemes as well. We are prioritising families, so we're prioritising older people and people with disabilities, and I don't understand why the deputies have an issue of prioritising the most vulnerable. Thank you.